Caleb, I want to transition.
Sure.
This is a great breakdown, by the way. I love these conversations. I always tell the audience, I was like, Caleb can talk about anything. And he knows so much of the stuff that he can go into in detail in a way that's I'm always impressed by and I can always listen to. Thank you for that. Um, Recently, this is taking place now as we speak. So this video was put out with attempts going after Venezuela seemingly getting more significant. The U.S. is practicing drills. They've reopened a military base in Puerto Rico, and they are now engaged in this kind of jungle warfare training in lieu of fighting in Venezuela. They've added apparently Cuba and Colombia to that list, or at the very least Colombia, but in that harebrained speech that was given by, what is his name? It'll come to me in a moment. Going after Cuba, where they had to pull his card in the United Nations. It'll come to me in a moment. But I guess my point is, this seems to be getting that much more acute with information coming out that Rubio is apparently the one that's running the show on this particular issue. They've convinced Donald Trump. All of them know that this is not about drugs. Rubio has convinced Donald Trump that the best way to secure the resources of Venezuela is effectively take the resources ourselves, put in a puppet, and allow that puppet to effectively do whatever they will with the resources at that point. And you even have this from Lula. Lula has now gotten far more, I guess, strident in his criticism of all of this that's taken place. Latin America seems to understand the gravity of what this means if the United States invades Colombia and, for that matter, Venezuela.
Everyone who read that letter knew that the information about Brazil in it was incorrect. That's why I told President Trump during our phone call that it was necessary to put people who actually liked Brazil in charge of the negotiations. I am a very experienced president. It may not seem like it, but I have a lot of experience. And do you only send people to negotiate? Who do you want to be against it if you yourself are against it? Or do you want someone to actually negotiate if you want an agreement?
Now, put this in the context of any negotiation that's taken place with Maduro. And you have Rubio as your point person for those negotiations and to come up to some kind of deal, some kind of agreement that prevents, let's say, a military intervention into the country. If Rubio is your point, you're going to war. You're going to war. Have your point of view changed on this? That this is more than a pressure campaign at this point? Or do you still think this is purely a pressure campaign?
Well, it's interesting. So it looked like they were preparing to strike, right? And they were preparing to strike. They were preparing to strike. And then on Friday, the Miami Herald came out with a story saying they're going to strike. They're getting ready to strike. And they asked Trump about it on Air Force One. He said, no, we're not. No, we're not. That's not true. And then Marco Rubio very defensively came out and with a tweet, and he called the Miami Herald story fake news, which is very odd because you think, Marco Rubio is the one who wants them to attack and he'd be threatening Venezuela. And he called it fake news. And then Tulsi Gabbard was in Bahrain and she gave this whole speech about regime change is over. We don't overthrow governments anymore. We're not going to do that. And then since then, Trump has said, well, they've asked him again, are you going to strike Venezuela? And he said, well, if I was, I wouldn't tell you that. I mean, we don't give that kind of information about it.
But he said Maduro's days are numbered. I doubt if we'll go to war.
Yeah.
But
so
I'm sorry to interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
If you've noticed, though, Trump did the same thing in every negotiation that he was with. When he was doing the Soleimani thing, Soleimani goes to Iraq under the idea of a peace guy, under the guise of some kind of peace deal. He gets murdered. Donald Trump is working with the Iranians. He's in negotiations. He tells them, hey, while we're in negotiations, nothing is going to take place. And his dog, Israel, attacks in the middle of negotiations. Same thing with Qatar. You have Hamas leaders that are in Qatar in negotiations, in which case, obviously, the United States is involved, and they get hit there also. Meaning in every situation where Donald Trump pretends as if there's some kind of negotiation taking place, that is when he goes and murders whoever he's trying to murder.
Yeah, well, when it comes to Maduro, the negotiations are over. I mean, it's like there were some backroom negotiations. That's over. Now they're just threatening them. And then and now they can't be clear about what they intend to do. And my hope, again, I'm really just hoping that we see a repeat of the first term where they threatened Venezuela and they did a whole bunch of things and then they moved on. Right. And Trump can say to Marco Rubio and all them, look, I did it. I threatened them. I did a whole thing against them. I sunk a bunch of boats. I did whatever, now we're moving on. And that's what John Bolton said in his book, Critiquing Trump, is that Trump got bored of Venezuela, that John Bolton really wanted to go to war in Venezuela. And Trump said, you know what? I'm bored. Let's move on. We did it. We did the food thing. We did it. We're done. Moving on. And that's why John Bolton hates Trump is, how dare he, and that's what I'm hoping that Trump is doing here. I'm hoping that Marco Rubio will have gotten his fix. And, I will say I'm blown away by how like Rand Paul and Thomas Massey and all of them have been critiquing this. And they've pointed out the whole drug thing is such a ridiculously obvious hoax, right?
Yes.
They sink the ships. They say, oh, these ships have drugs on them. Some of these ships would have had to like refuel 10 times to get to America if they had drugs on them. And if they actually had drugs on them, they would seize the ships because the DEA says Venezuela is inconsequential in the drug trade. They have not released a single name. So they know these people are drug dealers, but they won't tell us their names. One of the ships, this is my favorite, one of the ships they sunk, there were survivors. And the U.S. arrested the survivors and gave them back to Venezuela. Well, why didn't you arrest them for trying to bring drugs to the United States?
Because they weren't trying to bring drugs to the United
States. Because they weren't doing that, right?
Right.
Right. And they won't tell a single name. So, I mean, these survivors, right, if they're on the drug ship, they should give us the name. They won't say the name because they don't want us to look it up and see that they're not drug dealers. The whole thing is just that it has nothing to do with anything. And the fact that they won't even name the survivors, they won't name the people on the boats. These are just provocations. This is the USA threatening and bullying Venezuela, basically, and trying to provoke a situation where Venezuela retaliates. And then they can say, oh, Venezuela attacked the United States, and then they move against them. But Rand Paul, I mean, he was the one calling this out. Bernie Sanders didn't come out against it until like yesterday. And I mean, Bernie Sanders was silent. AOC is silent. We got Mamdani, who's running for mayor of New York City. He's saying, oh, Maduro's a dictator. I hate Maduro and all of this, I mean, the Republicans are more anti-war than the Democrats are at this point. The Democrats have completely dropped the ball on anything anti-war related. At this point, that's very obvious. And it was the same with Iran. You remember that? I mean, it was Marjorie Taylor Greene that was opposing the bombing of Iran. And finally, when the bombing was already happening, Bernie said, oh, that's not good. Israel might have the right to attack Iran. I'm okay with Israel attacking Iran, not America, though. Oh, okay, thanks. And it's wild. And then what frustrates me also is that all these people on the right think Mamdani and Maduro are the same thing. Well, if Mamdani and Maduro are the same thing, you'd think the Democrats who support Mamdani would all be speaking up about attacking Venezuela. They're saying nothing about it. They're not the same, right? They're not the same. And, Tucker Carlson recently did a thing about, there's no gay marriage in Venezuela. There isn't, right? Abortion is not legal in Venezuela. Venezuela is quite socially conservative. I mean, they're pretty liberal. There's LGBT people there. I've been there. They're not like, it's not like a super conservative society, but it's a Catholic country. They're socially conservative, and the socialism it's not bread tube. They're not a bread tube country. Okay. They're a real genuine anti-imperialist country. They're not bread tube. Right. And the memo has been sent out. If you're a leftist in America, all you got to focus on is LGBT all day long. And anyone who criticizes anything, anyone who's a Christian is a Nazi or whatever. That's not how they feel in Venezuela. They feel that the banks, factories, and industries and the centers of economic power should be organized to serve the people and not the profits of a wealthy few. And they've taken control of their oil resources, and they've used the oil revenue to stimulate and build a strong economy in Venezuela. That's what socialism is. That's what socialism has always been until now in America. Now socialism means, a rainbow flag, and you build a worker co-op with your friends and share the profits, and anyone who disagrees is a big fat Nazi or what. I'm so alienated from the American left, but I love Venezuela. I've been to Venezuela. I think Venezuela is a great example of an anti-imperialist country, and they've survived a huge blockade and a huge amount of pressure and such, and that things were pretty bad in 2015 when I was there, but they've gotten quite stronger since then. If you go to the CPI website, my organization, Center for Political Innovation, cpiusa.org, we have a great article by one of our members that just kind of breaks down the lies that the USA is using about the drug trade and other things, and how actually Venezuela's got quite a strong economic recovery. They're making their own food now, right? The reason again, why was their economy so bad in 2015? Well, Caleb, that's just because socialism doesn't work. That's why. Duh. No, well, actually, no, their economy was very strong, but it's oil centered, right? And that the highest oil prices in history were happening in the early 2000s. And they were using that oil money. But then, in 2014, Obama dropped the oil prices. He went to Saudi Arabia and they churned out a huge amount of cheap oil on the market, and oil prices went below $20 a barrel at one point. I mean, it was ridiculous. You could buy a family meal at Kentucky Fried Chicken that cost more than a barrel of oil cost. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? I mean, it was crazy. So they lost all this revenue. And then the USA had put sanctions like crazy. So Venezuelan companies couldn't just buy stuff from other countries. So they would have to, work through a back room and negotiation. And the amount of government revenue there was very low. And so all the stuff that they were having to import because they had only oil became way, way more expensive. And so you had a scarcity of consumer goods, and it was forced on the country. And it was awful, but it was imposed. And so what they did was they started building their own stuff, and they teamed up with Iran, and now there's Iranian supermarkets there, and they've opened up a huge amount of farms and all of that. And now actually, because of the sanctions, they've been forced to develop more and diversify their economy, and now they are actually recovering economically from all of that. It's very interesting, but the idea that socialism caused it, I quote the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal talked about how in 2013, quote, the party was still on. And that the poverty reduction and the huge expansion, I mean, until the oil price dropped, their economy was very, very strong. And then the oil price drop happened, and that's when they had the food crisis and the other issues. And then they've recovered from that. So it's infuriating when people just have this narrative about, oh, well, socialism just never works. Meanwhile, at the same time that Venezuela was having all those problems, 2014, 2015, the strongest economy in South America at that time was Bolivia. Under Evo Morales, they had the highest rate of GDP growth. So it's just it's frustrating to hear the distortions. And I mean, China became a superpower with socialism. China's the strongest economy in the world. And Russia, under the leadership of Stalin, they had the world's largest power plants, the world's largest steel industry. They became an industrial power that was strong enough to defeat a Nazi invasion. They eventually invented space travel. I mean, socialism has been very successful as an economic system. It needs to adjust, though, right? The Soviet model is very good at getting over that first hurdle, industrializing. But after that, you need the market, right? You need the market for fun things like consumer goods. I don't think the government should run hotels or restaurants. Things that make life fun, use the market. Let people vote with their dollars. But the market shouldn't be in control. We need a government that fights for the people, that is an anti-colonial, anti-imperialist government that fights for the people, that controls the banking sector and controls the electrical power grid and the major, industries like steel and all of that, and oversees the lending of monies to strategically make the country stronger. You have a national bank and all of that. That's what 21st century socialism is. And we see that in China. We see that in Vietnam with, what they call the socialism-oriented market economy. In Iran, they have what they call the resistance economy. They call it resistance economy, not capitalism, but Islam. And Venezuela, it's Bolivarianism, Bolivarian socialism. Nicaragua, they talk about Christianity, socialism, and solidarity. There's different forms of it, but it's basically profits are not in command. An anti-colonial government regulates and controls the economy. You let the market flourish around, that, and that's 21st century socialism.
Caleb, I agree with everything you just said out of your mouth. Every last thing. I always say I'm further to the left than most, and it's for that exact same reason. It's insane to me that private enterprise will control electricity, steel, these kind of vital enterprises. That operate, that a society requires to operate. It always blows my mind that we're okay with that.
As parents, would you let the invisible hand take care of your children? If you were going out for the night, don't hire a babysitter. Just have the invisible hand, the market. That's kind of the invisible hand, the market. I mean, the idea that the market just naturally makes everything good. Clearly, it doesn't. Why not have society come together and control the economy to make it work for everybody?
Do you think the U.S. has the capability of knocking over Venezuela if it does attack?
It would be an absolute disaster if they did it. It would lead to chaos all throughout South and Central America. It would lead to instability. And Russia and China are very strong. Iran is very strong. I mean, they're calling for international brigades. I feel like if they tried to do it, the results would be disastrous, but maybe that's what they want. I mean, maybe that's what they want. I hope that Trump is self-interested enough to realize that if he does that, there will be a lot of American servicemen coming home in body bags. All the problems he's supposed to fix, migrants on the border, drug gangs are going to get worse. And he's already really, really, really low in approval ratings. I mean, he's really, really unpopular. And if he does that, he'll be, shooting himself in the foot politically. And what gives me hope, back to Yemen, right? The Houthis, right? You remember, Biden bombed Yemen to support Israel, and nothing really came of it, whatever. So then Trump came into office, he bombed Yemen, and then he moved the aircraft carrier into the Red Sea, and they were bombing Yemen, they were threatening Yemen. And then there were some accidental deaths of U.S. sailors. You remember that? Right. Some U.S. sailors accidentally died. Now, the Houthis didn't kill them, they assure us. They just kind of, they slipped and fell into the ocean or something like that, right?
Hit the head in the shower.
And then Trump said the Houthis called us. They said they'll never attack a U.S. ship again. They called us and they'll never attack a U.S. ship again. And the reporter asked Trump, well, what if they attack Israeli ships, which is what this is all about? And Trump said, I'm fine with that. Not my problem. Right. And the U.S. started moving the aircraft carrier out of there. And the Houthis came forward and they said, we didn't call Trump. Trump called us. Right. He called us and we made this deal. No more U.S. ships get attacked. We can do whatever we want to Israel. And Trump pulled out. And I think what happened was Trump realized, there's going to be body bags. There's going to be, J.D. Vance came out and he said, all these people on the internet are saying Yemen's the new Vietnam. It is not the new Vietnam. Stop saying this. It is not the new Vietnam. It is not, and he's out there and they just didn't want the PR disaster of another regime change war. And that the only way they were going to stop the Houthis from attacking Israel was to overthrow them. They'd have to have a ground invasion and overthrow them. And the Houthis were ready to fight for their country. Their religion, they were told by their founding prophet, the day will come when we have no choice. We'll be the one people that will stand with the Palestinians like no one else. They are ready to be martyrs. They are ready to fight against Israel. And so the idea that they're just going to go, sorry, and stop, they're not going to stop, right? And so the only way to stop the Houthis from attacking Israel is to carry out a regime change war, and that would have a disaster for the United States. And so they just pulled out. And that, what gave me hope is I don't think Trump, it's not like he cares about the people of Yemen. It's not like he's morally opposed to it. It's just he realized, if I keep doing this, I'm going to have, a PR disaster. It's going to hurt my reputation. We're just not doing this. That's my hope. I hope that he comes to the same conclusion about Venezuela. He realizes that if he goes all the way in on Venezuela, it'll just completely devastate him with his base. Look, Rand Paul and Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene are already saying there's nothing for us in this. And that Trump will say, you know what? All right, I'm willing to beat my chest against Venezuela, to be against communism and be against socialism, but I'm not going to risk my political standing. Look, his poll numbers are really, really low. He's doing awful right now. Right. Yeah. I mean, for good reasons. He promised to make the country better and fix up everything Biden did. And everything Biden did, he's continued. The prices are still high. People are still struggling economically. He's not protecting free speech for pro-Palestine people. I mean, everything he said he was going to make better has not gotten better. So if I was him, I'd be more focused on turning around my poll numbers and getting people to like me than I would on, and also so many of his supporters are anti-war. And you saw J.D. Vance was just in front of an audience of Trump supporters that were just raking him over the coals over Israel and how beholden to Israel he is. And so the people who do support Trump, like the base, they're the ones that would not want a new regime change war, right? So if he loses them, he's got nobody. So if I was Trump, I would just back away from Venezuela, say, all right, Marco, I gave you what you wanted. Let's focus on something else. Let's start building that tunnel under the Bering Sea and connecting the USA to Russia over Alaska. Let's start doing that. We can name it. They're going to name it the Putin-Trump tunnel. Elon Musk has designed all the technology and how they can do it with AI and make it cheaper and all of that. That's what I would focus on if I was Trump, but I'm not Trump. So there you go.
From your mouth to God's ears. I suppose we'll see. Part of me thought this is a size envy thing. It's like being with a married woman. This is a very weird analogy, but the idea that Donald Trump has effectively lost, he can't get what he wants from the standpoint of Russia. He can't get what he wants from the standpoint of China. And so he's looking for an easy win. And he thinks Venezuela is that easy win. It's like he's getting his manhood back, his mojo. He needs to show that the United States still has the capacity to win conflicts. I hope it's not that shallow, and I hope that's not that fickle of a reason and rationale for doing it. I know Marco Rubio has ideological reasons for why he's doing it. He's Cuban of American, so he has certain points of view along the lines of Cuba, Colombia, Venezuela, etc. But we'll see. From your mouth to God's ears. I hope you're right. I hope it's a pressure campaign, and that pressure campaign, when it fails, he just says, "Oh well, let's move with something else." But we'll see. Caleb, you're fantastic, man. Caleb Maupin.
Hey,
Center
you're
for
fantastic
Political-
too. You have the best anti-imperialist. There's a reason people are hovering around your channel. Is you got every great anti-imperialist voice on here. People love Jamal Thomas, right? Word on the street is that you're a great voice and you run a great program. So, you know, I was talking about people at the Uhuru rally. Your name came up. People said, "Oh, I saw you on Jamal Thomas, and he's doing great stuff."
Really?
So, oh yeah. People love this channel. People know what you're doing here is awesome. So I'm glad to be here, and thanks for the invitation. I hope you're doing well in your life and everything. And yeah, we'll be in touch. Sound good?
Absolutely, man. Caleb Maupin. He's speaker, writer, journalist, political analyst, author. I'm going to let him introduce several of his books, but he's Center for Political Innovation, a very active organization that is all across the country, that is at protests, rallies, everything else. Caleb, give whatever 2 books that you want to give.
Sure. Who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for? And The Danger of an American Years of Lead. Check it out. Check it out. Center for Political Innovation, cpiusa.org. Always doing great stuff.
Caleb, you're fantastic, man. And by the way, check Caleb out on his YouTube channel, Caleb Maupin. Also.
Yeah, I stream a lot. I'll probably be streaming tonight. So talk to you soon. Thanks.
You have a good one, man. Be safe. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. We have come to the end. We've come to the end. We've had a massive show today. This show has gone 4 hours. Shout out to Dimitri for joining me at the last minute. Shout out to Caleb. Shout out to Mark. Shout out to Warwick Powell. We've had a damn good show. We have one more chat. This one is from Brave Top Reviews. Resign her job and do what? Work at Walmart? It's so easy to say that from the sideline. Y'all leave my Tossie alone, damn it, man. Fair enough. Brave, I know how you feel about Tossie. I know how you feel about Tossie. I do know how you feel about Tossie. But come on, man. Come on. Tossie is an administration that, after her spending her presidential campaign talking about regime change wars, how she's against these wars, against the war in Syria, against overthrowing Venezuela, against all of this stuff. And she is now in an administration that is doing all of the things that she repudiated when she was running for office. What is she to do? When the gentleman that was out there murdering, in command of Donald Trump, illegally murdering people in the Caribbean, he resigned his commission because that was the strongest position he could take. Now, I agree with you. Resign and do what? I don't want Katossi working at Walmart. Fair enough. But wouldn't you have more respect for her if she did? Wouldn't you have more respect for her if she did? I think that answer is yes. Even though I understand your point of you don't want her to resign. Fair enough. Fair enough. Guys, if you dig the content, like, share, subscribe. You can support this content. PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats. PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, Super Stickers, memberships. All of those things help support this content. You have my deepest appreciation for doing so. I always say you guys make this show what it is. And it is because of you that this show can